record. All right. So today we're going to learn formulas for the what's referred to as special right triangles. And we're going to start out with the 30, 60, 90-degree triangles. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that generally they label the 90-degree side X. They label the 30-degree side X over 2. And they label the 60-degree side as X radical 3 over 2. All right, so I'm just going to show you where they came up with those numbers. All right, because in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, you only have to know one side. And if you know one side, you know all sides. Whereas in a normal right triangle, you have to know 2 out of the 3 sides, then you can figure out the 3rd side. All right, but what I want to do now is just watch how simple this is. Oh, that's pretty bad. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to draw the best I can an equilateral triangle. All right, so that's supposed to be an equilateral triangle. All right, now if that's an equilateral triangle, what's the length of the side of that triangle? Someone tell me. X, beautiful, exactly what I want to hear. All right, so this is X, this is X, and this is X. All right, so now I need someone to tell me the degree measure of the angles. All right, very good. So this is 60, this is 60, and this is 60. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to draw the height or the altitude. So if I draw this, what happens to the triangle? Gets cut in half. Beautiful. Exactly what I want to hear. All right, so this right here, those 2 angles become what? 30. Now, how do we know it's 30? Because we could prove that those triangles are what? We can prove those triangles are congruent. The left triangle is congruent to the right triangle. Is everybody good with that? All right, since we can prove they're congruent, that means their angles are congruent. Besides the fact we knew this was an altitude, which makes that 90 degrees. Is everybody okay with that? All right, so far, does everybody see simple, right? And this is why, again, I always tell people, I don't understand why you don't know. All right, you should be able to recreate everything if you forget. All right, so right now, I would like someone to tell me then what this length is from here to here. Hold on one second. Let me do a better job. All right, I would like to know what this length is from here to here. Yeah, look how simple that is. X over 2. Now, what I'm going to go back to my original notes. The hypotenuse we label what? Well, because that's that. Opposite of 30 is what? Wow, how hard is that? Okay, you already got that, right? So now what I'm missing is I'm missing the height. I'm trying to figure out what that is. All right, I'm trying to figure out what this is right here. Now, if I'm trying to figure out what that is, how do you think I could figure that out? With just a bunch of letters. So what's the is everybody agree that's a right triangle? So the first thing that should come to my mind is I can just use what? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Now again, watch how simple this is. All right, so I want everybody, well not everybody, just watch me. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Somebody tell me what A could be. X over 2, I like that. What's B? The height. And what's C? Wow, look how easy that is. So bigger with that. Right now, you just have to understand a little bit of algebra. So what's X over 2 squared? Someone tell me. Beautiful. X squared over 4 plus H squared equals X squared. Now I'm trying to figure out what H is, correct? So now for whatever reason, don't say, huh. Before you go, oh my gosh, what are you doing? All right, let's see. Just watch. See if you can figure it out. Don't say anything. And then I'm going to ask somebody to tell me how you got it. For some reason, that's difficult for kids. I don't know why. Why is h squared 3x squared over 4 or 3/4 x squared? Tell me. Right. Right, I just don't understand that, guys. This is what? 1x squared. This over here is technically what? 1/4 x squared. So what's 1x squared minus 1/4 x squared? 3/4 x squared. For some reason, I just never understood why that is so challenging. This over here and this over here. I'm literally just subtracting 1/4 x squared. Does everybody agree with that? Anybody have any issues? It's okay not to see it. I can say it better. Anybody else? Everybody's good? So now somebody tell me h then. I do what? Well, I would take the what of both sides? Square root of both sides, right? So now the height is equal to, what's the square root of 3? Right, radical 3. What's the square root of x squared? What's the square root of 4? Now, the height in relationship to the hypotenuse. There you have it. Come on, I think that's so easy. Right, everybody finds that so challenging. All right, I don't think it's hard at all. Anybody have any problems with that? Tell me, sir.
I don't get how x squared equals x.
I didn't say x squared. You don't understand that? What number's in front of x squared? 1. Right? It's just a different way. Everyone should be able to look at that and say those mean exactly the same thing. What? I don't know what you mean. Couldn't I multiply everything through by 4? There's a lot of things you could do, right? But I'm just saying, I'm expecting everyone in here to say 1x squared minus 1/4 x squared is what? I just don't, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand the problem with that. Right? I'm not saying that's not legitimate, right? Some of you are not seeing that. I'm totally okay with that. But I'm just saying, if somebody says to me x squared over 4, I know that means 1/4 x squared, right? And if somebody said to me, what's 1x squared minus 1/4 x squared, I would hope everyone here could just say, well, that's just 3/4 x squared, right? But some people, for whatever reason, they're not as good with fractions as they should be. So that's what I want to try to correct if you don't know that. Anybody have any issues with that? Right, so now, how does that relate? That just means on a 30, 60, 90 triangle, you need how many sides? 1. All right, so for example, let's do this. I'm going to make a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Right, if I said this was 10, and this was 30, and this was 60, opposite of the 30 is always half the hypotenuse. So what's the short side going to be? 5. Now let's say you forget, for some crazy reason you forget. I always try to teach my kids, you just reproduce the equilateral triangle. And I said, that's just so simple if you can remember that. Does everybody see how this now is 5? And so the opposite, the 60, is just going to be what now? 5 radical 3. That's how simple. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. And now just for me, I'm going to copy this real quick. And I want everybody to just stay with me. And I'm just going to give you different things. I'm going to point to different things. You're going to tell me what it is. All right, if I say this is 6, what's the hypotenuse? And what's the opposite to 60? Yeah, guys, come on. This is so simple. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and make it really challenging. So be careful. 7 radical 3. What's opposite to 30? And what's the hypotenuse? It's all just patterns from this point. Anybody have any issues so far? Right? And again, some of you are like, oh my gosh, just slow down. I can slow down, but you never say slow down. Right? So if you're not seeing something now, please, now's the time to speak up. All right? I'm telling you, it's easy for a reason. All right? Okay, now I'm going to get real crazy. Let's say this was radical 5. What's the hypotenuse? Oh, yeah, some of you are a little struggling with that now.
Radical 10.
No. What? What am I doing from here to here? Say it. What am I doing? 45? What? Okay, that's much better. Thank you. How do I get from 7 to 14? Multiply by 2. Stop saying that. Multiply radical 5 by 2. That's a hard one. 2 radical 5. Yeah, that's embarrassing. All right, don't worry about it. All right, that's embarrassing. Radical 5 times 2 when you're struggling. All right, now let me really throw you off. What's opposite to 60? Thank you. Bo knows. Radical 15. Uh-oh, we got a problem. Karina, are you having trouble with 5 times 3? That's what we have calculators for, right? Radical 5 times, radical 5 times radical 3. Are you allowed to multiply radicals? Yes. Are you allowed to add radicals? Not unless they're the same. Are you allowed to multiply a rational number, which is 2, and an irrational number, which is 3? Can I multiply those together? No. Only rationals are multiplied by rationals, and irrationals are multiplied by irrationals. So if I say what's 2 times the square root of 3, you're going to tell me it is 2 square roots of 3. All right, that is, like I said, just a fantastic review for those of you guys who are going to take some standardized test or some test to get into high school. You have to know those. All right, so let's do it again. Let's have some more fun. All right, let's say over here, this was real hard. Let's say this was 6. That's 6. How do I get back to here? Say it, Sam. That's good. All right, so now let's look at our notes. How did I get from here to here, please? Multiplied by what? Radical 3. So if you go in the reverse order, you do what? Yes. Okay, so I can understand your confusion. So from here to here, I divide by radical 3. So now you just have to remember, what's 6 divided by radical 3, right? Are you allowed to divide those? No. Right? So we said last year you're supposed to rationalize the denominator. That means for some strange reason, the mathematicians got together and said, you're not allowed to have irrational numbers in the denominators. I still don't know why, but they just said that. All right, so we have to get rid of it by multiplying the top and bottom by radical 3. And that becomes 6 radical 3 over 3. Because of course, everybody knows radical 3 times radical 3 is 3. If you want to say 9, that is okay. It would be the square root of 9, and the square root of 9 is back to what? Then you can simplify this fraction to what? 2 radical 3. All right, so now you have to remember this. If I'm going from the 30 to the 60, I multiply by radical 3. If I'm going from the 60 to the 30, I do what? Divide by radical 3. If I'm going from the hypotenuse to the 30, I divide by 2. If I go the other direction, I what? Multiply by 2. Now, again, please listen to what I'm saying. some of the kids I used to allow, just come on, just memorize it if you can't do that. All right, but I don't like that. I just think it's so obvious, right, that you should write something down. And I always tell kids, I remember when I was starting out learning this stuff, I just wrote on my paper 10, 5, 5 radical 3, and then it would remind myself what am I doing? From here to here, I'm dividing by 2. From here to here, I'm multiplying by 3. From here to here, I'm dividing by 3. And from here to here, I'm multiplying by 2. Notice I never say, what do I do to get from here to here? You can do that, but it's just not necessary. All right. Now, the other thing I want to show for some of you guys who are forgetting, if I go from a large side to a smaller side, I have to get smaller, correct? So I'd be dividing. If I'm going to a bigger side, I would do what? Multiply. All right. So as I'm going from the hypotenuse to the leg, I know I have to be dividing. To go from this leg to this leg, I'm getting bigger, so I have to be what? Multiplying. And there's a multiply by 2 and multiply by radical 3 involved. Is everybody okay with that? All right, so that's your great lesson today on the 30, 60, 90 and how simple it is and how everybody always messes it up and they think it's so hard. All right, the other lesson for today is even easier. It's called a 45, 45, 90 degree triangle. Thank you. All right. Now, how do we obtain the 45, 45, 90 degree triangle? We take a what? We take a square, all right? And when we draw this in here now, this is equal to this, which creates what? 45 degrees. 45 degrees, that's 90. All right, so what's the side of the square called? X. X. So what's the hypotenuse? C. All right. So now, again, we've created a right triangle. It's called a 45, 45, 90. I have to figure out what the hypotenuse is. So it's just what? X squared plus X squared equals C squared. So I'm a little embarrassed to ask, but what is X squared plus X squared? Please think before you say something. Right. 2x squared equals C squared. I'm trying to figure out what the hypotenuse is. So I take what? I take the square root of both sides. So the hypotenuse is just the side times what? Times radical 2. All right, now how I remembered it was radical 2 was that there are 2 different angles. So it has to be a radical 2. In the 30, 60, 90, there are how many different angles? So I knew that a radical 3 was involved. All right, now how does that help? All right, so that helps because if I want to draw a equilateral triangle or an equilateral right triangle, here's how simple. If this is 5, the other side is, the other leg is what? And the hypotenuse is what? Come on, guys. That's all there is to it. All right. So if I paste again and I told you this over here, if I get real complicated and say that's 10 radical 2, then both legs are what? 10. All right. Now, again, we can just get real crazy and we can say, okay, let's make this 4. Are we getting bigger or smaller? So we have to, do we multiply or divide? So we divide by what constant? Exactly. And now we rationalize and we get 4 radical 2 over 2. And some of you guys eventually will just see the pattern. You won't even have to tell me all this, but that's just the math. All right. So now if I did it again, I came down here, and I decided to make this like 5 radical 2. What's the other leg? And then what's the hypotenuse? Don't say radical 4, because radical 4 is what? Radical 4 is what? 2. There's a 5 in front, so 5 times 2 is what? All right, so just to review again, this is what is important. 5 radical 2 times radical 2. What's radical 2 times radical 2? Don't say radical 4 anymore. Just say what? 2. Anytime you multiply the same radical, it's just that number. So the answer is what? 10. Is everybody okay with that? All right, concentrate with me, and we're almost done. All right, so now let's go crazy, and let's say this is 4 radical 5. What's the other leg? And the hypotenuse would be, come on, guys. Before you think, let's try to think. All right, what is it? 4 radical 10. Come on, it's just following. It's just multiplying by radical 2. All right, either multiplying by radical 2 or what? Dividing by radical 2. That's all there is to it. Again, this is a pretty big part of your standardized tests. Very simple. And what's silly, on the ACT, they don't provide the formula, but on the SAT, they provide the formula. All right. So again, very, very, very simple day. Very simple. All right. Those, hopefully now you understand the relationship between the 30, 60, 90 and the 45, 45, 90. So how does that help? Let's knock out this worksheet. Literally, you can do this worksheet if you understand in like 5 minutes. All right. So here we go. Now, again, we're going to name all the sides just for practice. So the other leg is what? And the hypotenuse? 25 radical 2. Now, once again, some of you guys never, ever talk to me, so I don't know how you're doing. All right, some of you tell me you're trying to get better. Well, if you're trying to get better, that's participating in class, especially when you don't know something. All right, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I'm going fast. All right, just speak up if you don't know something. All right, please. All right, so now number 2. Thank you. 17 radical 2 over 2. Why is that? Because to get from the hypotenuse to the leg, I do what? Divide by radical 2. So we're going to review 17 divided by radical 2. And now I have to do what? Yeah, multiply the numerator and denominator by radical 2. And we're going to say 17 radical 2. And of course, when I say radical 2 times radical 2, you just tell me it's what? 2. All right, how are we doing? Everybody's good? All right, here we go. Number 3. So what's the other leg? And the hypotenuse? Yep. Here we go. Number 4. What's the leg? Start out. Just tell me. It would be 100 what? Divided by radical 2. Now you're going to practice. Some of you guys have got the pattern down. Let everybody else know. Now, again, I would prefer that you know it's just 50 radical 2, but let's say you haven't picked up the pattern yet. So we're going to multiply the top and bottom by radical 2. So now it's what? And then we know we can reduce that to 50 radical 2. Everybody good with that? Any questions? Any questions with that? All right, here we go. Number 5. What's the other leg? So what's the hypotenuse? 100 radical 2. Everybody good with that? All right, so now here we go. What is the leg? Tell me it's first what? 88 over radical 2, which again, now some of you guys, 44 radical 2. Okay, I gave you 6 chances now to tell me you don't know what I'm doing. And that just means I've done such a fantastic job. Again, no one has any questions, right? Yeah, somehow I'm not believing that. All right, so now they're just, instead of drawing the picture, they're just telling you the hypotenuse is 26. Yeah, some of you guys, like I said, 13 radical 2. Is anybody interested in knowing how we just automatically know it's 13 radical 2? Is everybody kind of caught on to the pattern? What? So when you divide by radical 2, watch me. When you divide by radical 2, you're not allowed to have a radical 2 in the bottom. So everyone is just automatically rationalizing. And so you're really just multiplying by radical 2 over 2. So when you say 26, we just divide it by 2 and just throw on a radical 2. right? But again, I always tell kids, you're not really going to remember that in a month, right? But what you should memorize, you're getting small, you divide by radical 2. All right, and then those you guys are going into like your private schools next year. They're going to ask you about all the radicals. You got to be good at it. All right, here we go. So if the leg is 50, then the hypotenuse is what?
50 radical 2.
Yay, simple, simple, simple. 50 radical 2. All right, so here we go. So now, number 9, the hypotenuse is what? 22. And the other leg?
11 radical 2.
11 radical 3. Again, I always like to remind kids there's 3 different angles, so there's a radical 3 involved. 2 different angles, radical 2. Now, in my opinion, if you're struggling a little bit, always refer to question number 9. And that shows you the pattern. Dividing by 2, multiplying by radical 3. All right, so here we go. On number 10, what is y? Say it. 4 radical 3. You're dividing by 2. You're dividing by 2 to get to the 30-degree side. The 30-degree side is always half the hypotenuse. Now to get to x, I'm taking 4 radical 3 and what? Multiplying it by what? Radical 3. And again, what's radical 3 times radical 3? Times 4. There you go, guys. All right, this is just, do you understand radicals and do you remember radicals? All right, here we go. Let's knock out 11. So what's y? Say it.
Radical 3.
10 radical 3. And what's x? 15. Once again, good, Sam. Sam asking.
So on number 10, so like on the previous one, you multiplied to get the hypotenuse, you multiplied the long leg by 2.
I did not.
I did it 22. So 9, yeah, you did 11 times 3 for 22.
Exactly, that's not the long leg. The short leg times 2 gives you the hypotenuse. Right, I'm just telling you guys, everybody should refer to this. That's exactly what I used to do, is write down a ratio you know is true. Instead of 11, I always use 10. What?
Can you do 11? So how did you stop
How did I get what? I didn't. I do not go from the hypotenuse to the long leg or the long leg to the hypotenuse. Never. It always goes around the short leg. From the hypotenuse, or from the short leg to the hypotenuse is times 2. From the short leg to the long leg, it's times radical 3. That's just something you know. All right, here we go. Let's knock out 12. So x is what? Y is what? Yeah, look how simple, I'm telling you. 13, here we go. Now, again, you have to be careful. This is opposite the 60. So the 30 is what?
21.
21, beautiful. And what's the hypotenuse?
42.
It just takes practice and patience. That's all it does. And verify. Find one that's right and use that as your guide if you get confused. All right, 14, here we go. What is y?
26 radical 3.
26 radical 3. And of course, x then would be
78.
beautiful, 78. Thank you so much. Guys, I just think that's not hard. You guys are good at patterns. What? 26 radical 3 times radical 3. Radical 3 times radical 3 is 3. 26 times 3 today is 78. Right? Okay, here we go. The altitude of an equilateral triangle is 27. All right. If the altitude is 27, here we go. Here's my triangle. Now it's equilateral. So draw it out so you don't get, don't be mistaken. That's 27. This is 30. This is 60. So if I'm at 27, how do I get to this side right here? Yay, divide by radical 3. So let's do that. 27 divided by radical 3. 27 radical 3 over 3, which is 9 radical 3. So that's 9 radical 3. So that means the whole thing is what? Yay, 18 radical 3. Brilliant. 18 radical 3. Like I said, I just draw the picture and it's just simple. All right, drawing the picture is simple. Yes. Are you having trouble with 27 divided by radical 3? You know that's true. You do know that's true? So then I just multiplied the top and bottom by radical 3, right? You sure? And then 27 divided by 3 is 9. Yep. Okay, now it says find the length of the side of an equilateral triangle that has an out. Isn't it the same problem? Yeah, it's kind of the same problem, except it's easier. Right, so now we have 11 radical 3, so that means this side right here is going to be what? 11, so the whole side is going to be what? Yes, 22. If I need to draw that picture again, I can. Somebody need me to draw that out? Anybody have any issues? Anybody have any issues with that? Come on. Okay, so let's draw it out, please. I think that's a good idea. Look here. I'm just going to erase this. Oh. Well, I didn't really need to erase that. I'm going to erase this garbage. Okay, so now this is 11 radical 3, right? So now I need to get to this side, which is the short side, right? So it's just divide by radical 3. 11, am I right? 11 radical 3 divided by radical 3 is just 11. And then that's just double, right? Because we could just put 11 over here too, so you could see it better on that. Okay, guys. For whatever crazy reason, that's difficult. All right, I don't think it's that difficult. All right, especially once you understand the relationship. So just to make sure you're good, guys, if you want, you can write this relationship down, right, if you think you need it. 90 is always the x. Opposite the 30 is always x over 2. Opposite the 60 is always the hypotenuse times radical 3 divided by 2. And then, of course, the relationship between the 45, 45, 90. I should just write that up here. And then we have 45, 45, 90. Generally, this is x, x, x times radical 2. Any issues on that? All right, I wish I could make it harder. All right, but there's just nothing to it. All right, so 8-3. Get the other worksheet done. All right, 14 problems. Probably some of you already done. I appreciate you. All right. All right, my homeschool peeps, how was that? You guys okay?
Yeah.
That was easy, right? I'm agreeing. All right. So go ahead and finish that worksheet up. All right.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay,
Have a
guys.
great day.
Take care, man.